What manner of things are these? The venerable Commodore 64 is undoubtedly one of the best loved of all the 8-bit vintage computers. Growing up in the 80s, even a die-hard Sinclair fanboy like myself secretly desired one. I didn't risk telling any of my friends though. That would have ended badly for me. Instead, I waited until I was all grown up and fully adulting and convinced my future wife to ask me what I would like for Christmas. And I wish I could remember why. I chose a Commodore 64. She ordered it from a popular mail order catalogue and paid around £180, a lot of money for a young couple just starting out. The year was 1990 and the C64 I received was the C64C Light Fantastic Pack, and to this day the C64C remains my personal favourite flavour of Commodore 64. In the upcoming charity auctions on the 19th of October, I'll be selling a few C64s, and 3 of them are of the wedge-shaped C variety. This one was donated by my friend Fuzzy. It's an almost very nearly complete in-box example with all of its software and just missing the rubbish joystick which probably disintegrated on the Christmas morning it was opened, and similar to the Light Fantastic Pack I owned in 1990. Hopefully it will go to a good home. I quite like a custom build though, so that one isn't the subject of this video. The other 2 machines I have to sell to raise money for the Befriending Scheme Miniature Donkey Fund are a bit special and require some assembly. All of this lot you see here is stuff donated to the cause by many of you lot. I can't say thank you enough for all of the help and support I've received this year. I'm deeply grateful. But let's get to the matter in hand. I want to start with this box. This was bought with money kindly donated for this purpose, and I will try to scroll the names of those involved on the screen now as a thank you. To keep with the theme of the charity computer builds on this channel, we chose to purchase a crystal C64C case from the excellent Retro Passion here in the UK. To go along with this custom case, the lovely Dan Tootle sent over a set of custom keycaps. I believe these are of the smoked translucent variety, and later you'll see why this is a very cool thing. Unboxing, I'm just noticing this type of case requires standoffs for the keyboard. We'll get into why that's a bit of a problem later. But for now I want to show you the motherboard I'd like to put in here. This is a 60 clone by Rob Peepo Taylor. You may have heard me mention him once or twice in recent videos. But this isn't just a board created by Rob. No. Rob also built this one and sent it to me as a kind donation. We recently met up at the RMC Retro Museum Cave thing, and Rob handed me this board and a few other bits and pieces you'll see shortly. Rob is a super lovely guy and I can't thank him enough. These donations will make a massive difference to the final score. This is a box I've been sitting on for a while. Inside is the final piece of this computer's puzzle. Last year I had an email from Jacek of the American Retro Shop in New York, and he asked if he could support the charity event I was running back then by sending me an LED keyboard for a ZX Spectrum. Sadly I'd run out of time, but Jacek promised to help out in the next event. Well, this year, as promised, he sent over a MacBoard 64, custom made by himself. It's honestly fatal sending me sweets. I can't resist, and these taste amazing. And this is the keyboard itself, a fully mechanical, metal framed LED keyboard that will drop right into any C64. The remote control is for the LEDs around the outside edge, so I'll need to find out how that works for demonstration purposes. There's all kinds of bits and pieces in here which I'll go through as they get attached to the keyboard. Also a letter which you can freeze frame and read for yourself. I've got a C64 to build. The keycaps provided by Dan Tootle are exact replicas of the original C64 keycaps, but they don't fit on these switches, which is actually expected as these are not original C64 switches. Included with the keyboard are a whole bunch of these 3D printed adapters. These extend the stalk of the switches so the C64 keys will sit at the right height. They are super fiddly to get on. I'm so looking forward to doing the other 3 million of them. I really want to see what this all looks like in that crystal case. Ah yes, the keyboard brackets. I have a C64C I can borrow the brackets from and replace them when I have time later. Here they are. The right one fits nicely over the joystick port and screws through the board here. The left one though, yeah, that's not going to fit there, and there's no hole through the motherboard in this position to attach it. Luckily, some kind person shared a 3D print on Thingiverse for these brackets. The creator, Flower King, did their best to hide them though, as when you search for C64C on Thingiverse, these don't show up. Instead, they are labelled C64-2. Anyway, I printed a set and they look like they will do the job perfectly. Some of the motherboard holes are not perfectly aligned and I'm struggling to get the screws in. For now I'll just fix it in place with a couple of screws for the test fit and worry about the rest later. I've plugged in the keyboard, but this cable is just too short. Later I'll discover it hanging half out of the underside of the keyboard. I'll need to make a longer cable to fix this. Each of these function keys has two mounting positions. I didn't realise at first, but there are some extra standoffs in the kit to support the left side of the key as it's pressed. I'll find those when I read the instructions for the keyboard online. The spacebar and the return key both have wire stabilisers. They were super fiddly to install, but work great once fitted correctly. And now for the worst bit. Each key needs a standoff pushed into it to the right depth. And then to be pushed hard down onto the key switch. By the end of this, my fingers were numb, but wow, was it worth it. My main modern PC has a super fancy keyboard, and this feels every bit as good as that. It's a seriously good keyboard in its own right. Right, now let's see what it looks like lit up. Cable's a little bit short, so I need to build a new one. But this is what it looks like. Jacek chose yellow to go with the motherboard gold highlights for the main key colours. It looks amazing. I can't wait to complete this build so I can see how it looks inside that crystal case. My friend Henry is sending me some more ribbon cable so I can make an extension. So while I wait for that to arrive, I'll get on with the other C64 I need to build for this video. This is an Aussie C64 case. The brilliant Matt from the also brilliant YouTube channel Tech Made Easy donated this to the cause. I asked Matt where he got this case, and this is what he said.
So the Australian Commodore 64 case came to me by pure chance. Fans of my channel will realise that I tend to do videos around PCs from the 90s and early 2000s, but I've been a fan of channels the likes of Lee's for some time now, and I've been wanting to get in on the 8-bit market. One day I was strolling through Facebook Marketplace and an old computer keyboard was presented to me which looked very suspiciously like a Commodore 64. I hopped in the car and drove about half an hour to what turned out to be an old village post office that the owner was converting into her forever home. And there she was on the doorstep presenting me outstretched arms with the Commodore 64. She let me have a rummage around in the back and I found a few other bits and pieces and I covered all that off in my video. But it was only when I got this home that I realised that this wasn't strictly speaking a Commodore 64 that I was familiar with. In terms of colour scheme, this machine looks very much like an original bread bin model, but in terms of design styling, it's much more aligned with a Commodore 64C. After a bit of Googling, I came to realise that this machine is something commonly referred to as an Aussie, or at least the case is. It was manufactured by a company called Microaccessories of South Australia, although it was sold here in the UK by Evesham Micros as well, for about 20 quid including postage and packaging. The idea here is that you could have all of the aesthetics of a modern Commodore 64C without having to invest in a whole new machine. You can take the board and keyboard unit from original bread bin, shove it in here, and you've got something that looks a bit more modern. For me though, a Commodore 64 will always be the bread bin model. So when I had an opportunity to pick up a decent condition case, I happily took the innards from this machine and shoved it into that one. And I'm really happy to be able to give this case over to Lee for him to create something special with. I was lucky enough to see the board that he plans to use in this machine recently, and you guys are in for a treat. Lee, crack on.
Cracking on, Matt. The board that Matt was referring to in that clip was actually this red one that another good pal of mine, Simon Osborne, donated. But I have a bit of a dilemma. I also have these other two. The red one is an earlier revision 1.2 and the blue and purple ones are 1.5. So I took the difficult decision to go with a later revision board. But to make it up to Simon, after the charity event is finished, I'm going to build this red one up, minus the custom chips, and send it back to him. Simon has donated loads to my channel and the charity events, so it'll be nice to be able to do this as a thank you. Now, I have a new problem. Which colour? Everything so far in these auctions has been purple, so that felt like the easy option. But it also might be nice to do something different. I was torn, so I did the smart thing and made someone else choose. I put a poll on my Discord and let them decide, and they chose blue. Brace yourselves, the building is about to begin. Resistors first. While I start soldering these in place, I want to briefly go through how I'm going to go about this build. As I've already said, this will be sold for charity on the 19th of October, housed in that special Aussie case, so I need to keep the costs as low as possible. With that in mind, I'll salvage from my collection of scrap boards all of the parts I can. Resistors are pretty easy to find in my big bag-o resistors, thank you Henry, so they are zero cost. I have some of the diodes in stock and the others I'll take from the scrap boards. Most of the ceramic caps were kindly sent over to me by Chris Mogwai, he of the Electron ULA fame, including some of the more tricky ones like these axial caps. He also sent over a set of the large electrolytic caps. I'll provide sockets for all of the chips, so they'll be new too, but everything else will be recycled from the old machines. As I solder these in place, I'm coming to appreciate just how much thought goes into the design of these recreated boards. All of the through holes are much bigger than I'm used to. This makes fitting components into them a joy. It's easier to get the resistors in place, and then when you solder the joint, the large pad gives a lovely peak of solder that makes snipping the leg off easy and neat. Rob's a genius. He also provided this blue and the purple board. Resistors done, that's the first step out of the way. I'm going to tackle the diodes next. I'm referencing two web pages as I work my way around this board. The first is a bill of materials spreadsheet that seems to be from the Rob Taylor GitHub repository. This gives me a list of each type of part and makes it simple to work through from top to bottom. By the way, Rob has an online shop. I've now built a few of his boards and I've been nothing but amazed at the quality of his work. The other page is a parts locator created by Edu Arana. This saved me a whole bunch of time. You can find links to both of these pages in the description. It's easy to go mad doing this kind of work. Here is a good example. It wasn't even close. I've missed it all together. Try again, you muppet. This one. This one. Go, falling out. Oh. Well done. Before I started this board, I'd already removed all of the parts I thought I'd need from a donor board that Simon Osborne sent to me a long time ago. It's the only one I have that's also a 250466 and was a great resource. Diodes complete. Next, capacitors. Here are the new ones Chris Mogwai sent over for this project. I'll put the electrolytics to one side for now and just concentrate on the ceramics. Specifically the axial ones, as those are still at the same height as the other components already installed on the board. There are only a few axial ceramic caps and I'm soon looking for the next parts to install. One of the types of components I did salvage from the scrapboard are these resistor arrays. These two here are isolated, which means that when I test them to make sure they're still in good condition with the correct resistance, I have to test each pair of legs. It's worth testing them too. Resistor arrays are not as robust as other types of resistors and can be damaged with too much heat. I measured between pin 1 and 2, then between 3 and 4 and so on. The rest of the resistor packs on the board are bust. This means they're all connected together on one side. So to test these I measure resistance between pin 1 and 2, then pin 1 and 3, pin 1 and 4 and so on. All of the packs were in perfect condition, and as I solder them back in place I'm taking care to spread the heat around to reduce any further risk. Back to the ceramic caps. I have a whole bunch of decoupling caps to fit, but before I do those I have to salvage these two green caps from the scrapboard. These are 1800 picofarads and not something I have laying around. Lovely, they look great. Decoupling caps next. 29 of them. It's a good thing the part locator has this blink function, otherwise I might miss one of these. Foreshadowing. Returning viewers might have come across my obsession with blue tack before in other videos. Well, I'm taking it to a whole new level this time. I've propped the board up and am placing all 29 caps in their positions. Then I'm taking a small blob of blue goo and fixing each cap in place. Done. And I must have miscounted the caps as I have one left over. Never mind, let's not dwell on that, on we go. Knowing that as I solder these in place, there's a good chance they will move about, I only solder one leg of each cap. That way, if there is a problem and I need to make adjustments, it's much easier to reflow a single leg. I can even do that from the top side. Excellent. Now I can go around and make them all nice and straight before flipping the board over and soldering the rest of them. And then snipping all the legs off. This board is just a joy to work on. Without any question, the nicest I have ever had the pleasure to solder things to. There are a few more caps I still need to install. This one is being difficult. The huge ground plane is sucking all the heat from my iron and the solder won't flow properly.
More power. We're superheating. Intermix temperature 400 degrees.
Cranking the heat up does the trick. One thing I miss on my pine seal iron is the instant boost button. I might dig that out and give it another try to compare it with my Hakko. L1 is a 2.2 microhenry inductor. This one I salvaged from the scrapboard. Almost the instant I'd done this, I found a pack of them in my stock. I just soldered this in without recording it, because I'm an idiot. This one I didn't have in stock, but had a nice one sitting on the scrapboard. Tantalum. The only tantalum on this board is a 4.7 microfarad 16 volt, which is one of the ones provided by Kris. Voltage regulators. This 12 volt one does not require a heatsink as there's very little load on it. This 5 volt one though does. It gets very toasty. I've removed all of the old thermal grease and replaced it with some new modern stuff. And the crystal, again carefully salvaged from the scrapboard. One of the other items Rob gave me with these new boards was this modulator replacement. I could salvage a whole modulator, but I'm guessing this modern one will do a better job. Remember that spare decoupling cap? Wasn't spare, I missed one. Not so much a component, but I do need to add a wire link here. Time for something different, transistors. The three on the left are all of the same value and were salvaged and tested. The one on the right was also salvaged. There is one more capacitor to be installed. This one here next to the crystal is a trimmer cap, or a variable capacitor. I believe this is for fine-tuning the clock frequencies. I could use this one I removed from the scrapboard, but Rob gave me a few new ones, so just in case this salvaged one is wearing out, I'll install a new one instead. Ah, wait! There is another cap. This big orange radial film 0.22 microfarad cap over here where the power comes in. And next to it, the coil. I don't know if these have a wrong or right way round, but I made sure it's going in the same way it came out. Another salvage part, the bridge rectifier. The power input on the C64 is super complicated, with both AC and DC coming in from the PSU, and some of that being converted to DC on board, and some not. I don't even pretend to try to understand how it all fits together. Fuse holders next. These do have a right way round. There's a small tang at one end of each holder to stop the fuse sliding out. I'm leaving the fuse in the holder while I solder it to keep it in line. A sad day. My 500 grams of leaded solder is finally coming to its bitter end. Don't worry though, I have a new one ready to go. I think it's time to tackle the biggest soldering job of the lot. Sockets. And I think I'd like to do this in a different way from my usual method. This time I'm going to solder all of them at the same time. First, I'll put them all in their right places, making sure they're the right way round. None of your crazy Kim 1 nonsense here with sockets facing in random directions. Cue the funky music. Next, I'm soldering 2 pins on each socket to hold them in place. So I can feel if they're flush, I remove the blue tack. Whoops, missed one. Now I'll reflow each of those pins and push up from the other side gently to make sure all of the sockets are flush to the board. A quick visual inspection to check there's no pins sticking up or wonky sockets. Then I turn on my fume extractor, thank you Fuzzy, and get to work. That went really well. I'm giving it a clean with a stiff toothbrush and some IPA, not so much to remove the flux, which I'll worry about later, but more to remove any stray strands of solder. I think that's just about all of the components soldered to the board. Just these connectors. I'll start with these two, the serial and video sockets. All of these sockets and edge connectors were salvaged, cleaned, and then dunked in the ultrasonic cleaner for a spell. Once they'd finished their bath, I took them out and dried them and gave them a coating of contact cleaner to stop any corrosion. The different pinouts make muddling these up pretty tricky. When I removed the cartridge slot, I noticed there was some glue or other sticky residue on the bottom of the plastic part. So I'm replacing whatever that was with some double-sided tape to make it nice and strong. This metal shield is probably totally redundant, but I'd taken the time to clean it, so I thought I might as well include it in this build. We're getting towards the end now. Power socket, switch, and a couple of joystick ports, all fresh from the ultrasonic cleaner. This switch was feeling a little crunchy, so I took the extra precaution of stripping it down and cleaning all of the old grease out and replacing it. I'm getting pretty good at servicing these switches now, so maybe I'll make a dedicated how-to video one day. Are you watching Atari from the 80s? This is how you make sure a joystick port is strong enough to take multiple insertions without breaking its solder joints. Just screw it to the motherboard. And now I can fit the electrolytic caps. All of these big ones are brand new. All of these little ones are salvaged from the scrapboard, but don't worry, the scrapboard had a new set of caps on, all good quality ones too. Although I am missing this one, a 2.2 microfarad, and I don't have any of these in my parts bins. Having had a scavenge around the other parts boards, I found this one, and in my junkie tester it seems to be in perfect condition. I've never replaced a single electrolytic cap in all of the C64s I've worked on, so I'm very confident this will be just as good as a new cap. Normal edge connectors aren't as long as the pins on a C64 keyboard connector, so it's time to salvage one of those. I found in the past if you heat these up enough, it's really easy to make the pins go very wonky. So to prevent this, I'm sticking this breadboard onto them to hold them in the right place and also give them a bit of heat dissipation. Oh, that worked a treat. For the LED connector, I can't do the same trick with so few pins. So instead, I'm wrapping it in blue tack to absorb some of the heat and keep the pins in place. And that works great too. I was hoping to leave the keyboard connector in the breadboard, but other components around that area are stopping this from working. Having thought about it, soldering this in place shouldn't be as big a heat problem as desoldering, so I'm just going to stick it in the board and solder it. Perfect. So what's next, Benchley?
Always a good idea to test without any chips in. So let's give it some power. Switch on. Nothing's blown up. We've got 5 volts and it's 12 volts on the voltage regulator, obviously 5 volts on the other one. AC, yes.
VIC2 has 5 volts over on pin 40 and pin 13 is that one, 12 volts. Perfect. Ground is down here, 12 volts is on pin 28. Perfect. And 5 volts is 4 pins down. Perfect. I better stick some chips in.
So I've got this board which is very much scrap, it even says it on it. It's missing a SID and PLA and VIC2. It doesn't have the right memory and all of the logic is socketed. I can nick the 8701 though. But the CIAs, all the ROMs and the CPU are all socketed, so I'm going to take all of those out and clean up the pins because this is disgusting. But actually I'm going to put them in my test board first and make sure that they work in there. So I'm just going to take them out, clean them up and then test them. Before I get testing, I also have this board from Fuzzy, and this is very much a scrap board. It's got a 1 amp fuse in the fuse holder, and the chances are that things are going to be broken on it, but I have 2 memory chips here that I can test in my Retro Chip Tester Pro, and these are the right sort that I need. Found this board as well, which is a 250407 in my scrap pile, and it's got some logic chips in sockets, but they're MOS branded. The only 2 socketed are both MOS branded, so I can't use those. Never mind. So this is the board that I've salvaged most of the parts from. All of the cartridge port, the sockets. This is a board that Simon Osborne gave me, Flibblesang, from my Discord server, and so I want to use as much as I can from this. I use the filter caps from the for the SID. All sorts of bits and pieces have come from this. Some of the capacitors and some of the things like the inductors and the crystal, the coil, and the power switch. The resistor packs all came from here. So I've taken quite a lot of stuff from this one, and there is still a few bits left. So there's some logic chips and the 556 timer. There's 2 memory chips in here as well. I do have these 2 memory chips, but I think I'm just going to take all of the chips off of this board, and then I might mount this on my wall. My worry is that the chips have been trimmed too short on the other side. It doesn't feel like there's very much on this side. So I'm just going to give this a blast of hot air and see if I can just take this memory chip out and see if it would go in a socket. Yeah, really short. Super short. And so these are both the same chip. You can see quite clearly how much leg we're missing. So I don't know if this is going to be worth the time and effort. So that's as far as this board goes, really, I think. Which is a shame. You've served me well, board. So I've come back to this one, which is the one that I took all of the socketed chips out of. And it's got all of its logic chips in and the timer chip. And look on the back. It's difficult to see on camera, but all of these have got long legs sticking through the back. So I think this might be the one to go for. If I can get all of the logic that I need off of here, then that would be good. So I need to make a list of what I need and then mark them. Right, I've marked all the ones I need. I've got 7406, 556 timer, 257, 257, 139, a 373, an 08, the colour RAM, a 4066, and 74 LS258. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I've marked all of the back of the positions that I need to take out with an X to make it a little bit clearer for me. And I'm going to whack up the heat on my desoldering station, 400 degrees, which is much too hot for an old Commodore 64.
When I don't mind if a board is a bit damaged, I quite like to push the boundaries to see just what's possible. Having removed all the solder with the desoldering gun set to a much higher temperature than I would normally use, I'm now going to lever all of these chips out of the board without trying to remove the remaining bits of solder. I'm not even going to use hot air. I'm off the chain. How many traces do you think I'll pull up?
Oh, no rip traces yet. Oh, yeah, that one's coming as well. This might be a bad one. No rip traces. Oh, no rip traces. No rip traces. Oh, it doesn't want to go. Yeah, it doesn't want to go. Something's still holding on. Oh, it's going. Let's give it a wiggle. Pop the legs out by accident. Come on. Give it up. No rip traces. I don't think I'm going to be so lucky down here though. No rip traces. Wow. I took 10 chips out of that board without any fresh solder, flux, and I used 400 degrees heat. They were all grotty as well, and I didn't rip any traces. I'm quite staggered. So I've got a bit of cleaning up to do of the chips. These are all the ones that I just took out, and there's quite a few of them have got like some grotty solder on the legs. So I'm going to need to clean them up and get them tested.
This is my only spare VIC-2 chip. I'm sure another one will come along at some point. I've installed both RAM chips, all of the logic, the timer chips, the colour RAM, the CPU, VIC-2 and PLA. I should have enough here to make a dead test work.
Nervous? Come on. Come on. Oh, yes! Yes, that's just a... Yes!
That was an honest reaction of, oh my god it works, but there is clearly an issue, which seems to have made my brain freeze. The picture is a bit garbled because that trimmer cap needs to be trimmed. I can fix it for now with a bit of random trimming. Look at his little face.
Yes. Put some more chips in.
I'm so excited and probably a bit delirious from tiredness. I'm installing all of the other chips without moving the camera to show you.
Go the whole hog and stick a SID in as well. It's good signs.
And it seems to be working. For a proper test, I'll need to connect the test harness.
That's 100% perfect.
Excellent, it works great. No issues at all. I'm not sure how people will feel about this, but I'm putting a SID kit Pico in. It gives the eventual owner a lot more reliability and options than an original SID. And if they were after an original authentic experience, then this really isn't the machine to scratch that itch. Time to do the final parts of this task. Get this motherboard tucked up in its new forever home. I don't have the original motherboard screws for this case, but trying out a few different options for my screw bin, I found some Amiga motherboard screws that fit so perfectly in these holes, I could believe they were made for this. Keyboard connected, LED plugged in, case screws screwed. And it's finally done. I'm really pleased with the result. Could not be happier. The motherboard provided by the amazing Rob Taylor, case provided by the wonderful Tech Made Easy Matt, go subscribe, parts provided by the excellent Simon Osborne, Mogwai Chris and Paul Universal Retro Boss. I should mention this keyboard. I chose this one as it's a proper C64C style keyboard and I felt it would look really nice with this machine. This was one of Paul Universal Retro Boss's keyboards which needed repairs and some replacement parts after it was damaged in post. Paul let me have it for this project and I put together the parts needed to put it back together. It's a really good keyboard now and will last for years to come. Anyone remember the start of this video? There was something about a fancy crystal C64? Maybe I just dreamed it. Oh no, it wasn't a dream. I've extended the keyboard connector so now we can see what this looks like in all its glory. Oh, now that is a very over the top cool Commodore 64. I also added this white LED that Phil from Retroleum kindly donated. Cheers Phil. Also to go with this special machine is this custom built C64 power supply made by my friend RepairyMark from Rage Against the Retro. RepairyMark, or as I like to call him when I bump into him, Will, is also making a few more custom C64 power supplies. One of those will be bundled with the Aussie 64. I still have to sort out some of the other bundles, so no more details of where the other PSUs are going to go just yet. Along with the power supply, I'll make sure each of these machines is accompanied by a good joystick, some games and some method of loading software, although that's still undecided. Well, that was a super long video and I'm so grateful you made it to the end. For those that skipped to this bit, well, I'm just happy you're still here, really. Maybe set the episode running on an iPad and make your dog watch it. I have a few more big projects to finish up in the last few weeks before the auctions, but things are moving ahead in what I can only describe as a chaotic but forward motion. These two beautiful machines will be put up for sale on eBay, along with a multitude of other Commodore machines, to raise money to buy miniature donkeys for the wonderful befriending scheme Red Rose Community Care Farm. This is a place that offers support and amazing opportunities to vulnerable people. It's also a great place for volunteers to help make a big difference to others' lives. My own son Thomas goes to the farm 3 days a week, and every time he comes home he is smiling and buzzing. But what they really need is donkeys, miniature ones, and I'm trying to raise enough money for them to acquire some of these tiny donkeys and build them a home to live in. So if you'd like to help make this happen, you can either make a donation to the Just Giving page, which you will find linked in the description and pinned comment, or maybe bid on something in the auctions. Keep an eye on the channel for upcoming videos, including the only big box Commodore machine in the auctions and Commodore's first proper home computer. I also hope to do a big roundup video where I go through all of the items in the list so you can choose what you would like to bid on. And don't forget that there are other YouTubers around the world and here in the UK that are running their own auctions to end on the 19th of October, with all of the proceeds going to the Befriending Scheme. Thank you for watching. I need to go and lie down now. I'm so tired.